All right, so now let's go ahead and move to a very important topic, which is client-side protection of the routes. So right now, let's say that I'm not logged in. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete my local storage token, which is keeping my login status alive. There we go. So I'm not logged in now. And I can log in, but what if I just go to a URL? I will simply go to accounts and I can see the accounts page. The actual resources are protected. So if I go to console, you can see that since I don't really have a username, it's telling me that I can't really access those things. But even though I cannot access the resource, the actual list of accounts, I can still land on the account list page, and the same thing with the profile. So I can't really get the resources or update the profile because that is protected on the server side, but I can still land on this page. And that's not good, right? I mean, I shouldn't be able to even go to this page because I'm not logged in. So now the question is, well, how do we protect the client-side routes? Let's go ahead and get started with this. What we are going to do is we are going to create a component which is going to take another component, and these components are called the higher order components. So I'm going to go ahead and create a component, and I will call this component require auth.js. You can see that the name of the component, I'm not really putting it as a capital letter because it's a different kind of a component. It's not really going to have any display features. It's more so that we can pass in other components to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and import component from React, and I'm also going to import connect. So a higher order component, which we're about to build, is a component that takes in another component. So let's go ahead and say function. It doesn't really have any name, and it is going to take in another component, which we will call composed component. And since this is the function we want to export to the outside world, we will simply say export default. Now, inside this component, we will create a function or a class-based component. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a class-based component, which will be called authenticate, which will inherit or extends the component. In the constructor, which is fired whenever you create a component, we are first of all going to fire props, and then we need to check if the person is authenticated or not. Now, how do we check if the person is authenticated? Well, we can always use the global state to check if the person is authenticated or not. For that, we are going to go ahead and create map state to props. So let's go ahead and create a map state to props property, which is going to allow us to get the is logged in state. So I think our state is called is logged in. That is in the reducer. You can see there our global state is logged in. And we're going to go ahead and return connect, where we're passing in the map state to props. All right. Now inside the authenticate component, we can check if the component, if the this.props is authenticated. Basically, we're saying if it's not authenticated, what should we do if it's not authenticated? Well, we should probably send the person to history.push, and we should send the person to the root. So nothing else. I mean, you will be redirected to the root, which is kind of like the login page. Else, well, not else, but we can also go ahead and render the component if the person is logged in correctly. So we're just going to go ahead and say composed component, and we can go ahead and pass in all the different props that we have. So this dot props. And there you go. So we have created a higher order component, which it doesn't really have any name, but that is a default export of require auth file in which you are going to be passing in a component. Then inside the authenticate class, we are going to check that if the authenticate is not true, then we are going to go ahead and perform a history.push. We're going to send the person to the login page. If that is not the case, then we will render. All right. So now let's see that how we can actually start using the require auth. If we are going to go back to our index.js, which routes do we want to protect? Well, there are a couple of routes that we want to protect. We want to protect the account list route. So what we're going to do is we're going to call require auth, and that's our higher order function. We're just going to go ahead and wrap this with require auth. And the same thing we're going to do over here. We're going to go ahead and call require auth, and we are going to be passing in the profile because we want this to be protected. In other words, you have to be logged in to visit require account list and the profile. If you're not logged in, you should be kicked back to the login page. Okay, now let's go ahead and give it a try. I'm not logged in, and just to show you I'm not logged in, I'm going to go to application, and you can see that I don't really have any token or anything. Now let's go to the accounts page. See that? I can't even go in. I try to go in and it just immediately takes me to the login page. What about the profile page? Yeah, same thing. It takes me to the profile page. Okay, now let's go ahead and we will log in now. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. Okay, now let's go ahead and go to the accounts page. Oops, so it's still not doing that. Let's go ahead and check a couple of different things. Let's check our Redux. Okay, so that didn't really, okay, so we'll say go ahead and do it again. John Doe, and we'll say password. Okay, so that is fine. Oh, I think the reason was that I was actually putting the URL, which was causing a refresh, and the refresh was killing our global state. So that's another problem that we need to fix. So now I am logged in. I can go to accounts and I can go to profiles. So everything works just fine. All right. But every time my page is going to refresh, if I go ahead and refresh it, you can see it kind of logs me out because now our global state is reset and our global state is logged in is false. So that should not happen, meaning that if you accidentally refresh the page, even though you are logged in, it should not log you out. So in the next lecture, we'll be fixing those things. But we have fixed our routes. I mean, if you go ahead and try to visit a route and you're not logged in, as you can see, it kicks you out and takes you back to the login page. So that part is working correctly. The part that is not working correctly is that if I go ahead and log in, and now I am logged in, you can see that state is now changed to true. And if I refresh the page, it kind of assumes that I am not logged in. So it kind of refreshes everything. So this is something that we need to make sure that we fix. And we're going to fix it in the next lecture.